Jurassic World's darkest victims were children. Imagine being a parent on Main Street when the sky suddenly starts moving. Your child is beside you, still clutching the toy they begged for you to buy earlier that day. The park is loud, crowded and confusing, but for a moment it still feels like someone must be in control. There's staff nearby. There are families all around you trying to do the same thing, trying to get out. Then someone screams. And at first you do not understand why. You look up and something that was never supposed to be above Main Street drops into the crowd. That is the moment Jurassic World stops looking like a family resort and starts looking like the disaster it had always had the potential to become. And the worst part of all of this was almost certainly standing in that crowd: children. Jurassic World was built to convince parents that their children could stand close to monsters and still be safe. It dressed danger up as a wonder. It wrapped genetic experiments in bright colours, friendly staff, ride systems, you name it. For years, that was the illusion. A child could literally feed a dinosaur, it could ride a dinosaur, a child could even sleep next to a dinosaur on that island, and even camp there. I mean, if children were allowed that close to these monsters, then surely the park had everything under control. That is the lie Jurassic World sold better than anything else. Because the darkest victims of Jurassic World were indeed children. And that's what we're going to explore today. Because they were the people most encouraged to believe that lie. Their wonder became part of the park's proof. Their presence made the danger look managed. And their trust made the island look safe. But then the indominus rex escaped. And the pterosaurs reached Main Street. Then Camp Cretaceous showed us that 6 children were left behind on Isla Nublar. Not 1, 6! And that's 6 children that we were allowed to see, 6 children that the story had actually followed. So the question now becomes even harder to ignore. What happened to the others? And what happened to any bodies? Before we get to the evacuation, you have to look at one of the most innocent scenes in Jurassic World, the children's dinosaur area. It is easy to pass over because the scene is designed to feel harmless. Parents are watching, kids are smiling, small dinosaurs are being treated almost like pony rides. It feels like the kind of attraction a theme park would proudly put in a brochure. Come to the dinosaur petting zoo, your kids will love it. It was letting them touch them, feed them, climb onto them, and turning these prehistoric animals into something a child can physically interact with. The child sitting on a dinosaur tells every adult watching that that danger has been solved. It tells a parent that the animals have been controlled well enough to become part of a normal childhood memory. It tells families that Jurassic World is no longer the failed nightmare John Hammond built decades earlier. This version of a park works, and children are the perfect way to sell it. You see, a child doesn't see the laboratories behind the attraction. They don't think about the genetic control, the behaviour, or containment failure, or the history of that island. They see dinosaurs, they're allowed to touch, and they trust the adults who let them do it. Parents do the same thing in a different kind of way. That is how Jurassic World makes danger feel normal. But these are living, breathing animals from 60 million years in the past, and they have no idea what century they're in, and they will defend themselves aggressively if needs be. And this is where Zach and Gray become so important. This story is not just about 2 brothers being chased by the indominus rex. Their danger begins much earlier, before they even see an animal. It begins with everyone around them starts to accept that the gyrosphere is normal. I mean, everyone seems to accept it and trust it. The park approves it and guests seem to line up for it. So the boys step inside believing that they are safe and that the system works and the glass will protect them. The valley is controlled, right? I mean, even when I saw this, I thought this is a huge risk. To me, that doesn't look safe in the slightest, but to kids, if the adults built the ride, tested it, it must be safe. And let's not forget, they were easily able to just go off pace, go off track, and enter into parts of the park which were literally unsafe, where they meet the indominus rex. And these boys are trapped inside that illusion that Jurassic World had created for them, that it was safe. And it only gets worse from here. You see, Camp Cretaceous was also sold as a dream experience. And that is what's so disturbing. A place where selected children could see the island in a way no other ordinary guest could. More access, more adventure, more closeness to them dinosaurs. Oh, that sounds exciting, doesn't it? That is until the park collapses. Because those children were not safely tucked away in the most protected areas of the park. They were deeper inside the island systems, further away from their families and dependent on adults who were supposed to know what they were doing if something went wrong. Then something did go wrong, and the 6 children were left behind. And that detail in itself should feel enormous. Darius, Brooklyn, Kenji, Yaz, and Sammy, along with Ben, but not just part of a side story here. They're proof that Jurassic World's evacuation failed everyone, and it failed the most important people there, the children. Again, these are the 6 we were allowed to see. We'll come on to the others in a second. You see, these 6 kids remained on Isla Nublar after the park fell. They survived because the story follows them, but survival does not erase the failures of the others. What about the people who didn't survive? The people who the story never followed? What happened to them? And the 6 who did survive, well, they should have never been left there long enough to need survival skills in the first place. And once you accept that 6 children were abandoned, the unseen parts of the disaster become much harder to dismiss here. Jurassic World was full of families in the hotels, restaurants, transport systems, the camps, the crowds on Main Street. And when the evacuation began, children would have been spread all across this resort. Some would have been with their parents, yes. Some would have been in queues. Some would have been in the hotel rooms, bathrooms, shops. You get the picture. Some may have even been separated in the panic. Some may have even lost their parents in the panic. And I'm not talking about they disappeared. They were eaten. How would you process that situation? Some would have even froze because they hear all these alarms and they don't know what that means. This is how real evacuations become so dangerous. Children cannot process the chaos the way adults do. They rely on instruction. And during the Jurassic World collapse, the adults giving the instructions were already losing control, or worse, dead. The park had to move thousands of people while its own systems were failing, dinosaurs escaping left and right, and staff were reacting to information that kept changing every minute. And children were caught inside of all that confusion, trusting a park that had spent years teaching them that nothing was wrong, there was nothing to fear. Then the disaster finally reached Main Street. And this is the moment that the entire argument I've been building becomes impossible to ignore. So when the flying monsters reached Main Street, the park's image at that point had shattered. The danger was no longer behind a fence or behind glass that the guests could observe. They were part of it. They were dropped directly into it. People ran through the plaza as animals dived down from above. Panic had started to spread. Children were separated from their families and almost certainly caught in the middle of it. I mean, a little human would have been easy pickings for any type of animal on Main Street. Some would have been holding their parents' hand and looked up at the sky and not even understood what was happening or what they were seeing. Some would have been pulled through the crowd. The pterosaurs would have seen all of this and it wouldn't have made a difference. They attacked either way. The film itself shows the chaos really quickly, but the implications are far darker than the movie has time to even sit with. Main Street was not some remote corner of the island, it was the family area. And that's what makes this attack one of the darkest moments in Jurassic World, because children were present, and it gives this scene every reason to believe that they were, and were likely caught in the attack. Maybe some were saved by their parents, maybe some hid under tables or inside shops, maybe some escaped through the park via pure luck. But the idea that every child in that crowd avoided harm is impossible. A flying predator attack in a packed family resort does not stay clean. But that's what Masrani Global would like you to believe. But a hybrid escaping from a Paddock is a one kind of scandal. A terrible incident that overwhelmed the park. But that incident on Main Street is something else entirely. That's why the park would never reopen. Camp Cretaceous proved that children could be left behind, and they did. Zack and Gray proved that a family attraction became a death trap. And when you start putting all these pieces together, this story becomes far more darker than surface value, and far more darker than just one escaped hybrid. And what actually became of them victims? Did Masrani Global bury them in hopes that they would never see the light of day and that they could pass it off? Because we never really hear anything apart from the survivors. I'd hate to think what Masrani tried to cover up if they found any bodies or any survivors on that island. No company would ever want the public picturing children during disaster. They want clean language, they want controlled statements. They would want the story to be about a failed attraction, not about a family resort where children were caught up in the collapse. They don't want to hear about a child in a shop when a pterosaur attacks Main Street, or a parent dragging their child through the crowd only for the parent to be snatched away, leaving the child on their own, to potentially be picked off by some monster later on. No, all of this is far darker than we initially thought. Children trusted Jurassic World because children are supposed to trust the adults. Jurassic World broke that trust. When they started to become greedy, started thinking about the next big thing, more teeth, more money. And I think the darkest question of all is how many little humans survived, or how many little humans perished in that disaster. Because Jurassic World's darkest victims were indeed the little humans. And if you want to know more about these disasters, check out all my other videos on the channel. They're similar in tone to this and cover all aspects of Jurassic Park and Jurassic lore. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for plenty more upcoming content. A massive thanks to the InGen research team who are on screen now. You guys keep the power on in the park. And if you guys came across an escaped pterosaur in Jurassic World, could your day go any worse? You bet Jurassic can. Catch you later.